An ordinary vet visit took a shocking turn when vets discovered strange blemishes on a dog. As they examined the abnormalities, what they found left them gasping in horror. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories. Dr. Taryn was enjoying her morning tea when she received a distressing call. It was a clear autumn day, the kind that suggested a peaceful day at Clom, the regional animal charity where she worked as the chief vet. However, this call was anything but routine. The caller was shaky and nearly panting as they relayed that a dog was in dire need of help. "There's a dog in a backyard. She has odd, bumpy blemishes all over her," the anonymous voice stuttered. "It's severe, very severe." Dr. Taryn felt a chill run down her spine despite the comfort of her office. She had dealt with various animal health issues, but the caller's description of the dog made her uneasy. She quickly organized a rescue team, bringing on a young aide named Jake, and they set out on their mission. As they drove to the location, Dr. Taryn's discomfort grew. The neighborhood was run down, a place where residents were reclusive and incidents often overlooked. Upon arriving at the dilapidated house, a sense of dread hung heavily in the air. The yard was overgrown, littered with debris, but it was the sight of Belle, the black Labrador mix, that made Dr. Taryn's heart sink. The dog lay in the far corner of the yard, barely moving. Her fur was matted and thin, revealing her skin beneath. Belle should have had a glossy black coat, but instead it was marred by peculiar, bumpy growths. Jake approached the family at the back entrance, seeking information. However, the family appeared indifferent, almost apathetic. "Oh, that's just Belle," the spouse said dismissively. "It's some kind of skin issue. It's nothing serious." Dr. Taryn knelt beside Belle, her experienced gaze scanning the dog's body. The lumps were everywhere, on her legs, abdomen, and even her muzzle. Their sizes varied. Some were as small as peas, while others were as large as marbles. The more she examined, the more concerned she became. "This is unprecedented," Jake muttered from behind her. Dr. Taryn's expression tightened as she reached out to touch one of the lumps. It was firm, too firm for a mere skin condition. As she pressed against it, her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just a lump, it was alive. Shock surged through her as she realized the horrifying truth. The bumps were nothing but ticks, countless, swollen, and feasting on Belle's blood. "Jake, we need to get her out of here now," Dr. Taryn commanded, her voice urgent. The family's indifference quickly turned to astonishment as the team hurriedly lifted Belle onto a stretcher. However, as they did so, one tick, disturbed by the movement, burst, showering the stretcher in blood. "That's disgusting," the teenage daughter exclaimed, recoiling in horror. But Dr. Taryn was focused, her mind racing as she tried to comprehend the situation. For a dog to reach this state, it would have taken months, if not years, of neglect. This was not just a case of untreated skin problems. It was a severe instance of willful neglect. As they loaded Belle into the van, Jake discovered something that sent another wave of dread through them. Tucked under Belle's collar, nearly embedded in her skin, was a small metal tag. It bore the name of a vet clinic from a nearby town. Dr. Taryn felt a lump in her throat, realizing that Belle had once been cared for. She had once been someone's beloved companion before being abandoned to this cruel fate. The journey back to Claw was tense, with everyone consumed by the ordeal they had just witnessed. Belle lay motionless in the back, her breaths shallow but steady. Though Dr. Taryn understood the uphill battle of saving this dog, a pressing question haunted her. How had Belle ended up in this condition, and why had no one intervened? Upon reaching the facility, the gravity of Belle's condition began to sink in. The other vets and staff gathered, their faces reflecting shock and sympathy. Belle's frail body was infested with the monstrous parasites, eliciting gasps from even the most seasoned staff members. The head nurse, Carla, who had encountered countless cases of animal cruelty, looked particularly shaken. "The poor thing," Carla whispered, barely audible. "How could anyone let this happen?" Despite the internal chaos, Dr. Taryn took charge with an outwardly calm demeanor. "We need to proceed cautiously," she directed. "Her anemia is critical, and combined with tick-borne fever, her condition is extremely fragile. If we tried to remove all these ticks at once, she could bleed out. She's at risk of going into shock. The team decided to start with a high dosage of anti-parasitic medication. It wasn't a quick fix, but it was the safest approach. This treatment would gradually eliminate the ticks, allowing Belle to shed them without overwhelming her system. The process was slow, designed to give Belle the best chance of recovery. As treatment began, the ticks started to fall off one by one. Each tick that dropped felt like a small victory, but Belle's recovery remained uncertain. The severity of her anemia and the lingering effects of tick-borne fever meant that every step forward was fraught with risk. Dr. Taryn kept a watchful eye on Belle, her worries mounting with each passing day. While Belle's physical injuries began to heal, the emotional toll of her previous neglect was evident. She remained withdrawn, her once bright eyes now dull and lifeless. The vets realized they were not only fighting physical ailments, but also the psychological scars inflicted on Belle. There were moments when she refused to eat and instances when she would whimper in her sleep, haunted by the trauma she had endured. Enter Hannah, a dedicated volunteer at Claw with a heart as big as her love for animals. She had been following Belle's journey from the start, and when she finally met the dog, a wave of emotion washed over her. Belle's appearance was shocking. Patches of fur were still missing, and her skin was marked by sores where the ticks had been. Yet Hannah looked beyond the visible damage. From the moment she saw Belle, she felt an unexplainable bond. She began to spend extra hours at the shelter, sitting quietly next to Belle, offering comfort in the only way she knew, through patience and affection. She would read to Belle aloud, her gentle voice filling the sterile room with warmth, or simply sit silently, providing her presence to soothe Belle's injured spirit. Gradually, a connection began to form. Belle, who had been fearful of human touch, started to respond to Hannah's gentle caress. She would inch closer, resting her head on Hannah's lap, seeking the comfort she had been deprived of for so long. It was a slow, tender process, but progress nonetheless. Dr. Taryn observed this developing bond with a mix of hope and concern. She understood how fragile Belle's state was, both physically and emotionally, and worried about the potential consequences if Belle faced another setback. Sadly, that setback arrived sooner than anyone anticipated. Just as Belle seemed to be improving, her health took a sudden and alarming turn. One morning, Hannah arrived at the shelter to find Belle lethargic, her breathing labored. The steady progress they had made abruptly halted, replaced by a frightening regression. Dr. Taryn and her team sprang into action to stabilize Belle, but it became clear that she was having a severe reaction to the tick treatment. The medication, which had initially seemed like her salvation, was now threatening all the progress she had made. Belle's body was rejecting the therapy. Her immune system was too weak to withstand the assault. The situation was critical, forcing the team to make a difficult decision. They halted the treatment and switched to a milder, albeit less effective alternative. Hannah was heartbroken. She had poured her heart into Belle's recovery, and the thought of losing her was unbearable. She spent every possible moment by Belle's side, determined not to give up on the dog she had come to love. She would gently stroke Belle's head, whispering encouraging words, urging her to persevere through the pain. Amid this turmoil, a former Claw volunteer, who had left the shelter under contentious circumstances, returned without warning. Nina had a complicated history with the organization, having clashed with Dr. Taryn over treatment methods in the past. She claimed to know of an experimental treatment that could save Belle, but it was risky and unproven. Dr. Taryn found herself in a dilemma. The shelter had strict protocols and deviations could have serious consequences. Belle's condition was deteriorating, and time was of the essence. After much deliberation, the team agreed to consider Nina's proposal, but only if they could ensure it wouldn't endanger Belle further. As they prepared to administer the experimental treatment, Belle's condition, which had been declining rapidly, unexpectedly stabilized. It was as if her body had decided to fight back, rejecting the illness that had nearly taken her life. The team was surprised but cautiously optimistic. They chose to delay the experimental treatment, allowing Belle to continue her recovery at her own pace. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, miraculously, Belle began to show signs of improvement. The areas of bare skin that had been raw and inflamed were now covered by a soft layer of black fur, a testament to the resilience hidden beneath her fragile exterior. Her energy started to return, gradually but noticeably. It began subtly with a slight wag of her tail whenever Hannah approached, and a glimmer in her eyes that hinted at the spirited dog within. Belle began to open up, revealing more of her true personality. Excited barks greeted Hannah when she arrived, and her previously frail body was now filled with newfound vigor. She started to explore her surroundings, venturing into corners of the shelter she had once ignored due to fatigue. Her appetite improved, and she began to gain weight, her once emaciated frame slowly filling out. The transformation was nothing short of remarkable. Dr. Terrain could hardly believe her eyes as she watched Belle reclaim her strength. The dog that had once hovered on the brink of death now embodied hope, her story a testament to the incredible power of care and compassion. As Belle's condition improved, a new challenge emerged, finding her a forever home. When Claw announced Belle was ready for adoption, there was optimism that her story would inspire prospective adopters, but the reality proved more complicated. Belle still bore the visible scars of her past suffering. Her fur was patchy, and the marks from tick bites were evident. Despite her recovery, many potential families hesitated, overlooking her due to her past neglect. The influx of inquiries into the shelter did not translate into visits or applications. Hannah, who had been there through every stage of Belle's recovery, could not bear the thought of Belle being passed over simply because of her scars. She had seen the playful, loving dog beneath the surface, the dog who had fought so hard to survive. One tranquil afternoon, while sitting with Belle in the shelter's play area, she made a decision that surprised even herself. Without hesitation, she walked into Dr. Taryn's office and expressed her desire to adopt Belle. "I know she's been through a lot, but she deserves a chance to experience real love," Hannah said, her voice filled with determination. Dr. Taryn, taken aback by the suddenness of Hannah's decision, felt a surge of happiness. She knew Hannah was the perfect match for Belle, someone who understood her needs and could provide the safe, nurturing home she desperately required. Just as the adoption process seemed to be settling, an unexpected factor threatened to disrupt everything. An affluent family from a nearby town, who had seen Belle's story on the news, expressed interest in adopting her. At first, it seemed like a glimmer of hope. Belle could go to a home filled with resources and affection. However, as the adoption process unfolded, it became clear that their interest stemmed more from Belle's newfound fame than from genuine concern for her well-being. Hannah's heart sank. She sensed that their motivations were shallow and that Belle's welfare would be secondary to the image they wanted to project. Determined to do what was best for Belle, Hannah requested a meeting with the family and the shelter management. The meeting was tense, with the family outlining how they would showcase Belle's triumphant recovery across their social media platforms. Nevertheless, Hannah spoke candidly about her experience with Belle. She recounted the countless hours she had spent with the dog, the bond they had forged, and how Belle had gradually learned to trust her. She portrayed Belle not as a trophy, but as a living being in need of quiet, consistent love and care. Hannah's heartfelt appeal resonated with the staff, and by the end of the discussion, it was clear who the better choice was. The family, while offering financial advantages, lacked the genuine affection necessary for Belle. The decision was unanimous. Hannah was the ideal fit, and the family, realizing they would not succeed, withdrew their application. The day Belle officially became Hannah's was a quiet one, free of fanfare or attention, just as Hannah wanted. As they left the shelter together, with Belle happily trotting beside her, it felt like a chapter had closed, marking the beginning of a new journey filled with comfort and security. They had found in each other exactly what they needed. Belle's first night in her new home with Hannah was marked by a gentle apprehension. The cozy cottage on the outskirts of town offered a peaceful contrast to the chaos she had previously known. As twilight descended, Hannah set up a comfortable bed for Belle next to her own, hoping the closeness would provide reassurance. However, Belle remained uneasy, pacing the room uncertainly before finally settling in a corner and watching Hannah with a mix of curiosity and lingering anxiety. The adjustment took time. Each day brought small but meaningful milestones. Belle, once too timid to explore, began to venture further into the house. The backyard, with its towering trees and wide-open spaces, became her sanctuary. She would sit under the old oak, her nose lifted to the breeze. Hannah's other dogs approached Belle with curiosity and excitement. Initially, Belle held back, observing them play from a distance. But as time passed, their joyful energy drew her in. She began to join in, transitioning from cautious steps to playful bounds. One day, as Belle participated in a game of fetch, Hannah realized just how much Belle had flourished. Belle had become somewhat of a neighborhood celebrity. She accompanied Hannah to various community events, where her presence inspired others to consider adopting neglected animals. Her story was shared in schools, community gatherings, and even local businesses, where donation jars featuring Belle's picture helped raise funds for Claw. The dog, who had once represented suffering, had transformed into a symbol of hope and resilience. However, this newfound joy soon faced a challenge. One afternoon, an unfamiliar man appeared at Hannah's doorstep. He identified himself as a relative of Belle's previous owners, claiming he had come to take her back. His sudden arrival was unsettling, and Hannah's protective instincts kicked in. After a tense conversation, it became clear that the man had not come to reclaim Belle, but to apologize. He had only recently learned of her plight and was filled with regret for not intervening sooner. His visit, though unexpected, brought a sense of closure, not just for Belle, but for Hannah as well. They both understood that Belle's journey was not merely about healing, but also about forgiveness and moving beyond the past. As Belle embraced her new life, each day brought new discoveries and small victories. The path had been long and fraught with challenges, but the destination was worth every step. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey. If faced with a similar situation, how would you react if you found a dog like Belle lying helpless? We eagerly await your thoughts on this poignant story in the comments below. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more inspiring tales.